Hey guys, it's me, Seren, back with another video. So this is going to be a follow-up video on the Snyder Cut. I wanted to do a follow-up video because when I did my live stream, I was pretty just like hype and just like going. But I wanted to do a follow-up video for like newer subscribers or for people that are maybe like unfamiliar with why people are excited about this and like why this is a thing. And I also wanted to talk a little bit more about Ray Fisher because he's been going live a lot. He's been going live on Twitch. He's been going live on Instagram. And he's just been like really transparent about how excited he is that this is happening. And so I just wanted to also talk about that a little bit because it's sort of relevant to like what happened the first go around. So, like I said in my live stream, I did review Justice League. I will include a link in the description box to Justice League and to all my reviews of the DC films thus far. Because I think I've done Justice League, Wonder Woman, Suicide Squad, Birds of Prey, Aquaman, and Shazam. I'll put all the links to those review videos in the description box, but I did review Justice League. I did love Justice League. I actually saw it twice in the theater. Joss Whedon's part. So what happened? Let's get into what happened first. So Man of Steel was the first film out of the DC Extended Universe. And for some reason, people really hated Man of Steel. I talk about this in depth in my Justice League review. I feel like Man of Steel didn't really get a fair shake. People were judging Man of Steel off what they wanted it to be and not necessarily what it actually was. So it was a darker, sort of less optimistic, I guess you could say, take on Man of Steel. On Superman. Than we've seen previously, like the Christopher Reeves version that became really popular was just like very upbeat and hopeful and optimistic, and a lot of people associated that with their version of Superman. And Zack Snyder kind of came at it from a different artistic angle of hyper-realism, which I feel like that's sort of becoming a trademark for these DC movies, especially even going back to Chris Nolan's Batman series. And they previously did a whole run of extremely campy and fun Batman movies. I personally enjoyed them. I love Batman and Robin with Alicia Silverstone and Chris O'Donnell and George Clooney. And like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Uma Thurman. I don't know. I thought those Batman movies were fun. And then there were the late 80s, early 90s run with Tim Burton. Michael Keaton was Batman. Val Kilmer was Batman. You had Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman. So we've had like various iterations over the years of, well, it was obviously primarily Batman before getting into the movies that we're seeing now, focusing on other characters. But they've always had sort of a darker in tone, more offbeat type of tone to them. And I felt like Zack Snyder wanted to approach Superman from that same kind of angle. So he came at it from a extremely realistic, hyper-realistic angle of like, how would this be if this really happened? Like, how would it really be if you found out that like you were an alien and you were like adopted, so your parents that you've known your whole life are like not your biological parents. That's like a traumatic situation for like a human being. But then if you like also found out you were an alien and like that's why you have these powers that you've been struggling with since you were a child and all these things. So it would be traumatic. Sorry to say it, but like it would be traumatic. And Superman, the way that he approached Superman was like that Clark Kent is dealing with that, kind of unpacking it. That was the way that they approached Man of Steel. And there was just all this complaining about it. Like, it's not cheerful enough. It's not happy enough. It's too sad. It's too morose. And the colors are too dark. Man of Steel is a gorgeous movie. It looks amazing. It's beautifully shot. Like, the cinematography is amazing. The score is amazing. The scenes. The ending of Man of Steel is I really feel it's one of the best ending scenes of literally all time. I really genuinely believe this. I feel like, they show like his parents, his mom and his dad, and he's there and he just has like the red shit tied around him like a cape and the dog, and he's standing there, and then we see him on the bike and the glasses, and he's going to the Daily Planet, and then we have Lawrence Fishburne, who he's the editor of the Daily Planet. We have Amy Adams as Lois Lane. I loved her Lois Lane. I don't care what anybody had to say. And then we had like the Welcome to the Planet line and the smile. Oh, I get goosebumps every time. And the Hans Zimmerman music, Man of Steel's a masterpiece. I don't care, but it came at Superman from a different angle. You know, Snyder took a different perspective, and people didn't like it. It was received really poorly at the time. Now the public opinion of it is starting to change. We're starting to finally be able to have conversations about it. But at the time, there was this attitude of like, oh, it sucks, and it just sucks, and ha ha ha, laughing emoji. It's so terrible. You know, like, it was a meme almost to like hate this movie and say how bad it was. And it's a wonderful movie. Like General Zod, it's a great movie. And then you had like Batman versus Superman, which just leaned even more further into that, I think, almost as I personally think Batman vs. Superman was almost like a fuck you to the people that hated Man of Steel. Like, oh, you think Man of Steel is depressing? Like, I'll show you some depressing shit. And then that was, you know, obviously poorly received. And then we got to the point of, you know, Suicide Squad coming out and Justice League coming out with these really substantial changes that were demanded by WB, demanded by the executives after Man of Steel and especially Batman vs. Superman were received so poorly. They stepped in to alter the tone, to change the plot lines. They didn't want to let Zack Snyder see his, you know, his creative vision, his idea through to the end. Because originally it was supposed to be Zack Snyder in charge of all the movies, just like how they did Chris Nolan in charge of all 3 of the Batman movies, okay? It was supposed to be Zack Snyder through till the end. But instead, he had a personal tragedy in his life. His daughter committed suicide. And so he ended up leaving Justice League in post-production. There's rumors that he was fired and that his, you know, family tragedy was kind of used to cover up the fact that he's getting fired, but one way or another, he had a personal tragedy and he left the project. However, everybody knew that Justice League was mostly done. Like, if you were following, which I was, if you were, like, following, you know, them making the movie. And then the same thing happened with Suicide Squad, you know, because you guys know, like, I love Suicide Squad. Like, I was, like, obsessed with Suicide Squad for, like, several years. It's still, like, one of my favorite things. It's just something about it I just love. It's, like, very charming to me. And I love the cast, and I love Will Smith as Deadshot. And you guys know I enjoyed Birds of Prey. They continued sort of that aesthetic, that universe. But we were following them making these movies. I'm probably going to talk about Suicide Squad and Justice League together a lot here. We were following them making these movies. We're watching the footage that's being released. We're seeing the stills, you know, the still images, the set photography. Like, we're seeing it. And then with Justice League, you know, Snyder had to leave. But it was during post-production, so we already knew that, like, a lot of the movie had to have already at least been filmed, even if it wasn't, like, finished, per se. And then they hired Joss Whedon to, quote-unquote, clean it up, and then they started doing reshoots. And Henry Cavill was already filming Mission Impossible with Tom Cruise. He had this fucking mustache, right? So now we have, like, CGI mustache, and I literally said Joss Whedon chopped and screwed. So it's actually funny, ironic, because, like, people were acting like they didn't know what chopped and screwed was with Meg Thee Stallion. I literally said, I was like, Joss Whedon, like, chopped and screwed the movie. Like, he cut it up, he rearranged scenes, he did reshoots, he sort of cobbled together a new plot line. He added, like, comedy, you know, brevity, lighthearted. They wanted the Marvel Avengers treatment, because he directed Avengers. They wanted the Marvel Avengers treatment on Justice League, which goes totally against what Zack Snyder was doing. That's not even the type of director that Zack Snyder is. Like, he was literally trying to do, like, a hyper dark, you know, adaptation of these characters, and you bring in Joss Whedon, who, you know, Joss Whedon's, like, mouthy, quippy in the dialogue, you know, in the pop culture reference, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, like, totally opposite of, like, Zack Snyder, big, you know, cinematic pieces, overly hyper stylized. It's just completely different. And they tried to, like, mash these two movies together. And it, you know, like, Snyder's parts were great. I hated Joss Whedon's parts. And I wanted to see, and you can hear me say this in my original Justice League review from 3 years ago. I was like, you know, I want to see Zack Snyder's version. I want to see, like, his complete vision. I don't know what Joss Whedon did to this. I don't want this, you know? And I enjoyed Justice League, and I saw it twice. And I even still said, I want to see Zack Snyder's fully realized version. I don't want to see chopped and screwed by motherfucking DJ Joss Whedon. Getting back to Ray Fisher, in defense of Ray Fisher, in Zack Snyder's original version, his original cut, the Snyder Cut of Justice League, Cyborg was the main character. Like, Victor Stone was the main character. Like, and you could tell, which I said in my Justice League review, like, you can tell he's supposed to be, like, the heart of the group. And there's all these, like, philosophical questions and existential questions about, like, man versus machine, because, like, he's cyborg, you know, and, you know, is he more man, is he more machine, what exactly is he, and these, like, mother boxes that were used to, like, bring him back to life, and his situation with his father. And also, since Justice League, I've watched Doom Patrol on the DC Extended Universe streaming site, DC Universe, streaming site, and they still, you know, use a lot of those same plot lines because that's integral to who Cyborg is. On Doom Patrol, he has this relationship with his father that he's trying to sort of figure out, and these memories and, you know, this machinery and all of that. And Doom Patrol, he's the leader of the group, even though he's still a teenager, and I love that portrayal of him as well. But Ray Fisher was like the center of the story of Justice League. Like, he was the main character. Like, Star Labs had the mother boxes that they were trying to, like, use to defeat Steppenwolf. Like, the whole plot you can tell that it was supposed to revolve around Cyborg, and also because they had already greenlit a Cyborg solo movie. So this was, like, supposed to be, like, our introduction to Cyborg, who's a black character. Like, I wanted to see that. And it was almost like, number one, they were definitely afraid to, you know, let Snyder fully realize his vision, which I feel like I've literally been saying for years. Like, let this man realize his artistic vision. Like, they lost faith. Birdie Wolf left a comment on my live stream that was like, you know, they caved into negativity. Like, the negative reaction and the backlash from, like, Marvel fanboys that didn't even understand what, like, Zack Snyder was trying to do. Like, they didn't even let him see it through to the end. They used the personal tragedy to, like, you know, get him out of there and hire Joss, even though, you know, he did step back, but that they still, like, they let Joss hack that shit into pieces. And he removed so much of the Cyborg stuff. Like, we never even saw his backstory. We never even saw him before he was Cyborg. Like, and we know those scenes were there because they put them in the trailer. Like, the scenes of him playing football in the snow, and they did the same thing with Suicide Squad. There were all of these scenes that we saw. We saw the pictures, we saw the stills, we saw video, and yet somehow none of these scenes made it into the finished cut. We got a chopped and screwed finished version because the original test screenings did not respond well to Joker as a primary villain and them showing his abusive relationship with Harley Quinn, which is just, that's how it is. They felt it was too dark, and around those times everybody was like, it's not funny. It's so depressing. It's not funny. Like, where's the humor? Like, it's so dry and da-da-da-da-da. So they chopped and screwed Suicide Squad 2. They cut down so many of Jared's parts. And then they acted like his Joker was the worst thing ever. Jared Leto's Joker was not the worst thing ever. Like, it really wasn't. And especially considering the same thing happened. They completely changed the plot. They, like, cut mad shit out. We don't even know what we were watching. And Jared Leto's a good actor. Like, he was so amazing in Dallas Buyers Club. Like, he doesn't suck as an actor the way people tried to make it seem. Justice League, they cut out all of Ray Fisher's parts, and then they canceled the Cyborg movie. Like, they fucked with a lot of people's careers. I'm sorry. Like, WB executives, like, these fucking executives, they step in with these ideas, and they be the wrong ideas, and they'd be so scared. Like, and they just be like, no, well, we need to just, like, make it more funny, and, like, cut out all the dark shit, because, like, the fanboys don't like it, and the Rotten Tomatoes score, like, and Suicide Squad, like, made so much money. It was a top earner that year, 2016. Like, it was like living in the upside down around those times because everybody was acting like this shit was so bad. And it really wasn't bad. And DC was also doing some really interesting things with having, like, black leads and women leads, women directors, all these types of things. And it was just like, they couldn't do nothing right, and WB just caved. And it was so disappointing. Especially as a Zack Snyder fan. I think Zack Snyder is really a genius. Sorry, like, I love film, and I think he's a brilliant filmmaker. And I watched a lot. I've seen, like, all his stuff, but since we've been in lockdown, I watched Sucker Punch again. I love Sucker Punch. I felt like it was really extremely misunderstood. I watched 300 again. Like, I think he's really a brilliant filmmaker, and people don't understand the direction that he's coming from with his work. I'm sorry. I know that's like the stereotypical thing to say, but that's how I really feel. So I'm going to read you guys Birdie's comment, because I really like this comment, because Birdie missed the live. I'm so mad that I missed this live. This is right in my bag. I'm so happy that his cut is being released finally. We are getting the Justice League that we deserve. Also, to the people that said the cut didn't exist, of course it existed. It was even screened to the execs. It was just one of the producers convinced the execs that it would be better for the film to get that Marvel treatment via Joss Whedon. Them hoes caved because of DC negativity and obviously ended up biting them in the ass, and the same shit happened with Suicide Squad. They couldn't just leave things alone. They wanted so desperately to be liked and for it to happen immediately that they messed up the last two films in the Snyder era of the DCEU. They just wouldn't let the era play out the way it was supposed to play out and then do the course correction they felt like they needed. Even in this new era of the DCEU, nothing about the hack job they did ended up being important to the franchise going forward. So y'all didn't gain anything, but we certainly lost things because of these shitty decisions. Because it's like, after they like hacked up the movie so bad and everybody was like, what the fuck? They decided to change direction anyway, and then they just like pivoted to Wonder Woman, which then did really well. Then they pivoted to Aquaman, which then did really well. They pivoted to Shazam, which I really enjoyed, that then did really well. Now they're doing their darker standalone films like Joker, which did really well. Like, it's like you guys hacked up those early movies that some of us really loved and enjoyed and wanted to see for nothing. It's not official, but we kind of lost Henry Cavill as Superman. I think that Henry Cavill would come back for Man of Steel 2. And there was this like persistent urban legend rumor that he quit. And I was like, why do people keep saying Henry Cavill quit Superman? Henry Cavill has not come out and quit Superman. I haven't seen anything of Henry Cavill saying he will not do Superman again. Like, and he even like posted some shit like wearing a Superman shirt on Instagram, and I felt like he never out and out said he was opposed to coming back. And even when Zack Snyder made his release, they were all on a Zoom call, and like Henry Cavill was on the call when Zack Snyder like posted that they were releasing the Snyder Cut. Henry Cavill never seemed like he was anything but supportive of Superman. I feel like so much of the dialogue around like these DC movies was just like not like rooted in reality. It was just like a lot of like gossip and like I don't even know how to describe it. Like the internet rumor mill just like really kicked into overdrive, and like people with these like opinions like influencing things. And it's funny because now they're complaining about the fans campaigning to get the Snyder Cut released, but like nobody wants to talk about how in those early years Rotten Tomatoes, bloggers, reviewers, the way that they were fucking hounding and abusing the fucking fans of Suicide Squad, and the way that they would talk to us, and the way that they would talk about the movies, like as if that didn't have an influence. It did. It had a whole influence on the studio. Like the studio caved. Now they just made a decision for us, and y'all are so salty about it. Salty! We kind of lost Henry Cavill as Superman. We lost Jared Leto's Joker. The director is over here saying that they had to cut the best parts of his performance, Leto. And even in the movie we got, I never saw what was so bad about what we got that we had to fire him. Ray Fisher didn't get to shine the way he was supposed to shine. That whole movie, Justice League, was supposed to be his. And then he was supposed to get the Cyborg standalone, and both them shits got canceled because of how motherfuckers acted about Justice League, even though it was totally hacked up by Joss Whedon. Speaking of him, apparently he's supposed to be in the Flash movie, and I think if he is received well in that film and the Snyder Cut, we may get a solo film. And that's what I want. Like, this Cyborg movie, like, I want this fucking Black American-led, like, superhero movie. Like, I want this Cyborg movie. I want this fucking Cyborg movie. We're definitely a way off from that happening, but I believe there's still hope for that. And I responded, release the Iyer cut of Suicide Squad and give us the Cyborg movie. Because I know that there's also a completed or semi-completed, a fully filmed version of Suicide Squad with the original plot where Joker is the primary villain. I know that shit has to exist, because if for it to really genuinely not exist, that means that what? After they finished recording it, David Ayer just like deleted it. Like he lit it on fire. He burned it. He threw it in the garbage. I truly believe that shit is locked up in the WB Warner Tower. Like, I really believe in my heart that the Suicide Squad cut exists somewhere, just like the Snyder Cut. We finally got the victory and defeated the salty-ass bloggers. Ray Fisher was supposed to be the main character of the film. Him and his family is what the plot revolves around. Joss removed the entire family, the Flash's black girlfriend, and inserted that random Russian family. And in my original Justice League review video, I was like, for some reason, the whole final battle ending of the movie takes place in fucking, I don't know, Russia or fucking Chechnya or something, in a fucking radioactive nuclear fallout wasteland. And I mentioned, I was like, it's weird. I felt like, number one, it's weird as fuck to not have your final battle at least somewhere near some type of lake, toxic riverbed where we could see a little bit of Aquaman's powers, because instead, like, Aquaman really doesn't have very much to do. We don't really see him do much in the final scene because it's like in a Russian desert. And I was like, who is this random ass white Russian family that they have us following? They're not even speaking any English. They're not even like important to the plot. Like, Joss Whedon like cut out all the Victor Stone stuff and made up like a totally different ending, and like just he totally changed the plot. I don't even understand how people are saying like, oh, it's gonna be exactly the same movie. They're just gonna like, you know, film some dialogue and like do the editing, and that's gonna be it. Like, you guys don't seem to realize that Joss Whedon filmed like a totally different ending for the movie. Like, they did extensive reshoots. In my Justice League review, I was like, they put Zack Snyder's name on this movie, but it's really not his movie. Like, it's really not his movie at all. So the fact that we're finally getting his movie the way we were intended to see it is extremely exciting. And especially for those of us that are Ray Fisher and Cyborg fans, because he was supposed to be the centerpiece of this movie, and then he was supposed to get his own movie. And I just really feel like WB got very spooked and skittish and scared after the horribly overblown reaction that the fucking fanboys, and especially the Marvel fucking fans that just love to fucking pick at DC. I don't want to hear it. I don't care. As well as the fucking Superman obsessed fans that could not let go of like Christopher Reeves and like their idea of what Superman should be. So they like very immaturely just like, people really kicked the shit out of Man of Steel in a way that felt mean-spirited and salty, and I really don't fuck with Rotten Tomatoes for that. I really don't fuck with most of these blogs, most of these reviewers. Also, everybody's bought and paid for by Disney and Marvel right now as well. Like, they can put out some garbage and it will get the best reviews, even if audiences don't like it. But like, DC can put out some stuff that's possibly more experimental and get like weird reviews, or like, all these DC movies have all this chatter. Even around like Joker coming out, there was like all this like, is this going to inspire violence? And anytime DC does anything, there's all this negative chatter. And Warner Brothers was like caving, but now it looks like they finally decided to hold their fucking nuts because HBO Max is launching and they need content. So it's just like, we're finally going to get something that we've wanted so bad, and that like people really wanted. And if this movie does well, and we're able to like finally, or miniseries, you know, however they're going to do it, because it's supposed to be like 4 hours, so they might do like a 4 or 6 part miniseries, something like that. But if we could finally get a Cyborg movie, if we could finally get a Man of Steel 2, like, but if we really got a Cyborg movie with Ray Fisher, it would just be really nice. And I definitely think that we're in a different place now than we were a few years ago when Zack Snyder was originally going through with these, because, like, it sucks to say, but now you have, like, Aquaman that has succeeded and can show that you can have, like, a quote-unquote POC, you know, in a lead role. We've had Black Panther since then, which shows that you can have, you know, a black, you know, contemporary, because we all know Bleed was a success, you know, Spawn, stuff like that, but you can have, like, a black contemporary superhero in a lead role and it be successful. Like, they did not have faith. They did not have faith in Cyborg. They did not have faith in Zack Snyder. They did not have faith in this creative vision. Like, they came up with this whole plan, this creative vision of, like, what we were going to get, and then they just didn't have the faith to like see it through to the end, and they really let down a lot of people, and they let down a lot of their fans, and a lot of us just felt like, you know, like, we're fans, like, we want to see this stuff, like, Why are you like caving to the people that aren't even fans, that don't even like what you're putting out, that are not gonna like what you're putting out? They're never gonna like what you're putting out. We're your fans. We actually want to see it. Like, when are you gonna do something for us? And they finally did something for us. After all this giving, we finally get to receive Snyder Cut. This is why we're so happy. And this is why you're also seeing a lot of motherfuckers that are salty because they never wanted us to get it. So, there will be links and related videos in the description box. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Food for thought as always. See you guys next time. Peace.